Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Hanging with the Hoopers podcast. Tim and Andrew Hooper, your hosts, where we believe the attitude of leadership is absolutely everything. Andrew, today we're going to talk about, we're going to pack several things, but we're going to talk specifically about what we feed our minds.
Absolutely. I'm excited for this one. It's a cliche that we hear all the time, but it's one of the truest cliches that we hear, right? What you feed, what you put in is what you get out. And we can fall so easily into this environment we're in the world today of constant polarization, constant stuff happening around us. That just, we suck it in, right? And we might think, oh, I'm just consuming. Well, when we're consuming, that's affecting what we're outputting, right?
Yes.
So at the end of the day, I'm excited to kind of dig into this a little bit with you today.
You know, we talked earlier about whatever is in the fruit, like the quality of your fruit reveals the quality of your root. So if my fruit's bad, possibly my root's gone bad. And it's not time to cut the tree down. Okay. We're humans and we're valuable. It doesn't mean you're a bad person if you're not you're lacking virtue in your life. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you might be in the wrong soil. It might be that you're putting the wrong nutrition into that soil of your mind. So really thinking about, okay, let me uproot. Let me go dig down into some good soil. Because let's talk real quick about an example driving up here to see you today.
Yeah. Well, you shared a good one. What some headline about one of the football games this weekend? Yeah,
so Cowboys and the Eagles, right? You got two great teams going to play, and I didn't watch the game last night. Had things going on, and try not to consume too much. Talk about consuming or addicting ourselves to some sort of form of consumption. Football, right? It's easy to consume football. It's on. It's the thing. If you're into football, maybe another sport, and just limiting that. So anyway, I'm giving myself some props because I'm about to give myself a kick in the pants. But so I did not get the game, but I was flipping through my screen this morning and I saw one of the headlines pop up. In fact, talk about distraction for a second. I went to Google and to search for something. I forget what I was going to search for, and the headline popped up. Right, so immediate distraction.
What did it say?
Well, it showed Cooper Rush's wife with her head in her hands. Like in the booth. I'm like, oh, what happened? It says Cooper loses on the field and in his personal life. I was like, oh man. And immediately my heart went out because part of me is like, man, leadership, we know is in a glass box. And if you're a celebrity, cameras in your face all the time, you don't have a private life. So my heart goes out for these people. But the negativity in that headline absolutely pulled me in, right? And it was really overblown. Here's the other thing. The headline will always be the major nugget. There's nothing more you're going to see, really. If you could just learn that, it would save you so many. But I clicked. You know the problem with clicking? Not only does it feed my mind, the negativity bias. You're laughing.
No, the face you made while you were trying to say that was great.
The negativity bias, it fed my mind. But the problem with our cell phones, our smartphones nowadays, is when you click, your phone just learned, the algorithm just learned, your browser just learned that, I need to feed him more of these types of things.
Right.
You talk about an amplified problem nowadays. Dad used to just flip open the paper, and if there was a negative thing and he wanted to read it, it was on the paper. He had to wait till next Saturday to get the next paper. The problem with our phones nowadays is it's amplified. You click it, it's 10 times more lethal than the previous generations because now your phone is going to absolutely deliver up more of that polarization right into your phone. So again, what am I feeding myself? I absolutely looked at it. In the moment, I scrolled down halfway through the article. I'm like, what am I doing? Distraction. Feeding myself this. And it wasn't even that big of a deal. It was simply some sportscaster took out of context what his wife said. And all of a sudden I'm realizing, what am I doing? So I think we all have to, this podcast is a call to myself. It's a call to all of us leaders to say, what are we doing with our mental diets?
Yeah. This thing's swiveling on me here, but we'll make it work.
Good old microphone problems.
So at the end of the day, what you hit on a few very important things there. Number one, I think it's super important for all of us to realize that the world today is built on polarization. Every single person writing an article out there is trying to polarize it. They're trying to get clicks. They're trying to drive some viewership, right?
Jeff Bajorek writes articles.
Yeah, a lot of people do. But what's the point? You're trying to write something.
We are trying to get views, yes.
Yeah. You're trying to get some sort of set of eyeballs on your stuff.
Right.
Right. We do it here for the podcast. We want you guys watching and consuming the podcast because we think it adds value. We love it. We love learning and sharpening ourselves as we talk.
Right.
Because we learn something every single day about ourselves doing this.
You do. I know, it's fun.
Okay, so be aware that that's the case. So as you're consuming, you can kind of filter stuff through that lens, right? And how many times have you clicked on something and you're like, oh, this is what they're talking, like, hopefully you're doing that and not sitting there saying, oh my goodness, right? Yeah. Think about how everything becomes either, you're Republican or you're Democrat, or you're Christian or you're not, or you're this or you're that. You were a good employee, but you left me and now you're not. And so our competition
on the team
is,
or you're off the team.
Yeah, on the team or off the team. You're either us or you're not, right? So it's kind of this whole, that all that stuff comes as a byproduct of the stuff that we're constantly feeding ourselves. Yep. And being aware of when in our lives we're more consumers than we are, I don't know what the correct
contributors
maybe contributor. How are you contributing to yourself? Right. Is kind of my idea here. Right. I just think personally, when I'm most productive, it's when I get up in the morning, I exercise my body, which leads me then to exercise my mind through reading.
Because we all know when you first wake up in the morning, there's no exercise in your mind. It's just it's a little bit foggy up there.
Hey, listen. For you and me, that's the case. But I bet you there's plenty of people watching this podcast, and drop a comment in the comments right now if you are someone who bounces out of bed in your workout gear ready to hop on the Peloton. Okay. Because I know there's a few of you out there. That's fine,
because I go to sleep in my workout gear just so I have no excuses. But,
well, it's funny.
Always foggy up there.
Side note, I have no excuse now because a really good friend of mine shows up at my house between 5:30 and 6 in the morning. And I have the weights and stuff at my house, right? So he's like, I need a workout, buddy. I'm coming to your place.
Home gym, baby.
Monday morning, I'm groggy. I'm like, bang. Actually, he walked in. I forgot to lock the door. I live in a safe neighborhood. He walked in. I'm like, who's in my house? What's going on? He's like, turning on the music, cranking it up. Let's go. Gosh. Okay. I hate it, but I love it because once I do it,
do you hate it before or do you love it before?
I hate it before and during, and I love it afterwards.
You always love it after.
But the reason I talk about like health when it comes to what we consume is I believe a lot of the things we consume in life or the decisions we make on a day-to-day basis either contribute to us just being a consumer of whatever it is. Like right now, are you going to sit down for a whole weekend and just binge watch a show about like a serial killer who's a sadistic person? Or are you going to actually take some of that in doses and be intentional with your time of what are you doing to put something more positive or something more focused on what you want to improve in your life into yourself, right? So typically in those moments in life when things are not going well are when I know personally for me, and I think for a lot of people that I know, some of those times are when you fall into being more of just, let me read the headlines. Let me just you're just kind of going through the motions.
So a metaphor there, right? Yeah. When things are chaotic in your life physically, you're stretched over here, you're doing this, you're running over here, and you just have a lot going on, no margin. Those are the times that it's easier to eat out. Those are the times where it's easier to just go home and grab that bag of chips, turn the TV on. Maybe you're feeling sorry for yourself after all of it, right? And you just go grab the gallon or the quart of ice cream and you just take a spoon to the couch. I've done that, right? I mean, I know you told me earlier you couldn't ever see me doing that. I've done the ice cream, not the chips.
Way to toot your own horn there. Look at that, the chiseled jawline over there.
No, I've done the ice cream, man. I read a statistic once, or not a statistic, Facts About the Presidents You Didn't Know book, and it said George Washington was addicted to ice cream. And back then, I didn't know
they had ice cream back then.
I know, back then it cost a lot.
Chisel the ice out of the lake.
He was addicted to ice cream. He had an addiction to ice cream. I thought, man, that would be a good addiction. But anyway, beside the point, it's in the chaotic times in our life that I think it's easier to go be that consumer. Or that unaware consumer instead of that critical thinker, instead of that, contributing into your own life, into your own mindset, and being intentional with what you contribute into your mindset. And so I think the key there that you said was when things aren't going well. It's
easy to feed junk to yourself, both mentally,
when you're feeling junky,
physically, health wise, when things aren't going well. Yeah. Think about the environment we're in right now.
Yeah.
This business environment, we're in the real estate world. So everyone is either freaking out externally or internally right now, right?
Rates,
if you're tied to this,
inventory and
realtors are looking for, where do I find my next source of business? Our title companies are looking at the actuality of running a business in a down market. Like, hey, we might run in the red for a while. So there are quite a few things there that can trigger us to kind of go off the rails if we're not aware of it, right?
And then the headlines, you're looking for those headlines that maybe something's improving,
look at all the
you're
headlines.
just looking at headlines instead of creating headlines.
Right. Instead of looking at how do I filter. So I think this is kind of the crux of this whole conversation. Yep. Is crux still a word people use?
I don't know. It's old school, but it's okay.
The nucleus of this conversation.
Ooh, nucleus. I like that.
That's a better word, right?
The prism.
Is as a leader, like I personally believe that your job is to filter the headlines and not let that necessarily affect how you lead every day. I'm not saying go stick your head in the sand and be oblivious. You need to know what's going on. Yep. But are you simply consuming, or are you being the person that people can gravitate towards because you have a belief in something greater than a headline? Well, look at all the stuff around us that goes on every day that is good.
Right.
Headlines drive our conversation, but so many times there are so many better things going on around us in our communities that if we focused on and poured ourselves into, we'd be amazed about the good stuff that comes back. Right. So that nucleus of a leadership, how do you filter that and create an environment on your team that is conducive to success? So Tim, how do we do that? I'm putting you in a box now.
Well, it's a great question. And I think what you just said, you can either be a casual consumer or you could be a critical thinker and also a creative thinker. There are things outside of the box that the headlines aren't talking about right now that we as business leaders or as leaders in our lives can go create. I think one thing you talked about there was when you're feeling good, you get up and you work out, you're on point you're jumping ahead of your goals, you're in your relationships intentionally. That's a vision.
It's the same in business.
That's a vision.
It's easy when things are going well.
That's a vision. So where's your vision?
Right.
Where's your company's vision? What is your vision? Who's involved in that vision? How are you being super uber clear about your vision and communicating that to your people, your team? I know we've talked about communication, best practices, and getting in front of your team using video. I'm not going there today. But what I want to say is in conversations, how are you helping your people to redefine headlines? How are you helping your people, your team, not to just listen? We can all talk about the weather, in sales. Don't talk about the weather. Show up. Oh yeah, the weather's out nice today. I'm like, okay, tell me something I don't know. It's like, did you see that headline? I mean, maybe there's a game that y'all won. Maybe the Ravens went. Never mind. But maybe your home team won or didn't win. We're just having to sit in Baltimore, so I had to talk about the Ravens.
Let's talk about the Eagles because everyone who likes the Eagles will be happy.
So maybe your team won or crushed it. Like, okay, talk about that win. Maybe they didn't. We'll talk about that too. But it doesn't need to be all consuming. But that's just the sports team. The world's melting down. It doesn't need to be the entire crux of the conversation. See, I just used crux as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think what we have to do as leaders is point ourselves, point the team, and our behavior always follows our beliefs. If we feel like we're polarizing, that's our fruit.
Yeah.
It means maybe we're absorbing our roots into some polarized soil.
Yeah.
Right?
What you put in is what you will get out. So true. Absolutely true in life. And so we're not saying that just because you consume headlines, you're a bad leader.
Right.
But the critical thinking that surrounds it, how you filter that, and how do you marry and create articulate vision for your team based on what's going on.
And then
this is important, right? This piece here is very important because your team deserves a consistency out of you as a leader, no matter what level you're at as a leader. And I want to go there because this gets a little deep. So do you tie your worth as a leader to how well you're doing on a scorecard or in a business result? Because there's some things in a real estate market where interest rates have just jumped up over 7%, and there's a big affordability issue. There's not going to be the overwhelmingly great results right now. There's going to be a certain level of grind and a certain level of consistency to what we're doing. Yeah. And so look at, obviously, if you're investing in yourself and just not consuming, you'll probably have a much higher worth tied to what you are and who you do.
Everything you touch is going to start turning gold. You're going to turn relationships to gold.
And the consistency piece.
Yes.
Right. And this is something I've tried to like encourage leaders that I've worked with and mentored. Don't show up and have your team guessing where you're going to be for the day.
Wow.
Like if you're walking in the door, in my view, I believe as a leader, you should come in consistently. I'm not saying you don't have a bad day here and there, but instead of being a peak and a valley and a rise and a crash, it's a little bit more mellow, right? This is an important piece of leadership that I think sometimes we overlook. We think being authentic means we ride our emotions, and that's not what it means at all.
Yes, exactly. Being authentic is saying, here's how I feel.
Right.
Being a leader is saying, I'm not going to be run by my feelings. Boom. And you said it, get your mindset right in private.
Right.
When you show up in public, people should be able to predict. They should be able to predict. They should be able to set their life. Now, I know that's a high call for leaders, and we're going to talk about that soon, Andrew, in our podcast, Adulting is Hard.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. I'm getting excited, man.
I know.
I'm getting so pumped.
Shaking the table.
Get your mindset right in private. Be true to who you are. Do it for you, knowing full well that it's going to touch everybody you know. Miguel, before we end the show, any questions? Any questions that you would have from this? Any thoughts that were sparked?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out how you guys mentioned about polarizing effects, whether it's the news or whether it's anything like that. How can you share with the younger generation how to combat that? For example, I like to be informed. I rather watch satire comedy. That's just a way for me to take a laugh at what's going on in the headlines and stuff like that. That's a relief for me. But it might not be in the right state of mind. So I was wondering, what kind of habits would you share with the younger generation?
I can kind of take it first. The number one habit is an elimination habit to me. Eliminate how much you're consuming. Go look at if you have an iPhone, if you have an Android, I'm sure they have a feature like this, but go on your iPhone and look at your screen time.
Probably not.
Go look at your screen time on your iPhone. And look where you're spending most of your time.
Right.
Okay. I shocked myself last week. It said you had 6 hours of screen time per day. I was like, what? Well, then I dug into it, and it was because I was driving all over the state of Maryland. So I had a lot of Google Maps screen time. So that was okay screen time.
Google Maps? You're not using Waze anymore? I'm sorry, Waze, if you're listening to this podcast. Andrew's a traitor.
We won't go there. So to answer Miguel's question, I think as a young person in today's world, you got to be uber careful about how much of what you're consuming and be aware of the spin that's put on it. Everyone, spin is basically just opinion.
Be aware. Yeah.
And so obviously people's opinions are their reality.
Yes.
Right. How they view the world.
Yes.
That's okay. But make sure you have your own. Make sure you can kind of look at facts.
Beautiful.
And take the spin out of it and be a critical thinker. And then Tim, we talked about this before the show. Yeah. So what do we replace that with? If we're eliminating something, what do we replace it with?
Yes, because your mind's a vacuum, right? So I love that you talked about elimination. Let me talk about replacement. So what is your vision, right? Say I want to be a better dad. Okay. What's helping me get there? What am I plugging into? There are plenty of podcasts with just a little bit of work, a little bit of research. I can plug something in. I'll tell you, the other night I was working on a project for my mom-in-law, and I was kind of working late, and I had already watched one football game, talking about football games and overconsumption, and I was just going to roll with the next one. And it was just on in the background. It was coming through the loudspeakers, and so I was just listening as I worked. And I thought, man, there's this book I've been wanting to read. And actually somebody told me about it several years ago. Never picked it up. And then somebody reminded me about it just recently. So I just went and turned on. I said, I could just Google tomorrow and see who won. And I went and turned this book on. Did you know I made 8 chapters, like all the way through 8 chapters? And it's like a 6-hour book with like 14 chapters, but 8 and actually absorbing it, not just like casual listening. It was actually being absorbed. I mean, there were things in my life I was like, whoa, I was like riveting. It was all about being a better dad. And I'm like, wow. And it was easy once I got going. It took a little bit.
And it feels good, right?
Once I got going, yes, it felt good.
Talk about feeling. When you invest in yourself, it feels good.
The love was not there before. I had to go find it. What was that book? Then you always have those prejudices or biases that come up that you have to work through. Maybe the voice sounds like somebody you know that you don't like or whatever. You know how that triggers off in your brain.
Sure.
And it wasn't like produced. The thing about this, a football game, It's a goal to the field goal, score. It's so exciting. Your psyche wants that. But this book is just like, this is a Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, blah, 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 by Wiley Publishers, blah, blah, blah. Right? And so you have to get your brain excited when you're replacing with these habits. Get your brain excited that I'm going to learn. And over this long term, production quality does not equal quality. Okay, production quality does not equal quality. So all the binge watching on Netflix, the 3-second flips of the screen here and there, oh, it's bright and flashy and pulls you in, does not equal quality result in our lives. So take the long term. Listen, you're investing into this podcast right here, 20 minutes, 25 minutes maybe, and at the end of it, hopefully there's a nugget or two that are perspective shifting, life changing. What I always say, inspire thought or spark thought, inspire action.
Right.
Hopefully, right? But it takes kind of getting into it, turning it on, and just kind of going with it. It's so important to be able to unpack these topics in our life. And so many times we're moving so fast. Social media screen, social media screen flipping from this to that, to this to that. And we're not focusing in on one area of our vision that we want to grow in. So have your vision, and then go intentionally put things of growth into that vision. You want to learn how to run a business? Go read The Dollarization Principle. Go read Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. Go read a business book.
Take notes on those books, everybody.
You want to learn how to change your financial family tree because you didn't grow up in financial wealth? Go read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Go read The Millionaire Mindset. There's so many books that we can read
or listen to
nowadays. You told me about essentialism. I'm just turn that one on and start listening, right? So, I think the replacement is so big. And we're going to talk about who are you hanging with soon in another podcast, and we'll go into more about how you surround yourself with people. So I don't want to go too deep. You could go into replacement for 3 more podcasts.
Yeah.
But
I love what you're talking about here, which is replacing with what you eliminate needs to be replaced with something. And first of all, to choose what you want to eliminate, is it aligned with your vision and what you are looking to accomplish in your life? And as a leader, are you filtering through the headlines? Especially in today's environment, are you grounded to what your vision is? Is your worth tied to something more than your business's results? Because at the end of the day, it can be easy to be on cloud 9 when things are going well. And in this environment, it can be easy to really go crash if you're not grounded in something more. And that all goes back to what you put into yourself. We're running up on time, I think, for this episode. I don't want to keep folks too long in the morning because we could go on and on.
Yeah.
But to be continued in future podcasts. This is one continuous conversation about leadership. We really appreciate all of you who subscribed. If you're watching this, thank you. Drop comments, like the episodes. We appreciate it. It means a whole lot to us.
Get grounded in your vision, folks. Make sure you're feeding your mind. If it's vegan for you, if it's paleo, if it's keto, whatever that diet needs to be for your vision, get grounded in your vision.
Boom. We'll see you next time.
All right, guys.